From William and Mary's Raymond A. Mason School of Business and the Hampton Roads Economic Development Alliance, this is the 757 Recovery Podcast, a limited-run podcast series dedicated to helping the Hampton Roads community navigate the economic and social changes brought about by COVID-19. Today's episode is all about social confidence. Our host will be Dr. Ken White, Associate Dean for MBA and Executive Programs at William & Mary's Raymond A. Mason School of Business.
In today's episode, I'll be joined by William & Mary Professor of Business, Dr. Rajiv Kohli. Dr. Kohli has recently been recognized as the most cited scholar in his field of expertise, health informatics, which is the practice of integrating IT within healthcare systems to improve patient care and healthcare outcomes. Prior to joining the Mason School, Dr. Kohli held visiting professorships at the MIT Sloan School of Management, the National University of Singapore, City University of Hong Kong, and the University of Cambridge in England. Today, Dr. Kohli will share his expertise in a discussion regarding the concept of social confidence and how we achieve it so businesses and consumers can get back to a more relative state of normal amidst an ever-present possibility of contracting COVID-19. After a brief discussion with Dr. Kohli introducing the concept of social confidence, we'll be joined by local business owner Emmanuel Baker. Mr. Baker is a hairstylist, cosmetics educator, and owner of the Virginia Beach barbershop King Cuts. But before we get to our discussion with Mr. Baker about the business climate in Virginia Beach, here's my conversation with Dr. Rajiv Kohli on social confidence.
We're joined by Professor Rajiv Kohli from the Raymond A. Mason School of Business at the College of William and Mary. And today, Professor Kohli is going to talk to us about social confidence. Rajiv, how are you?
I'm well. Thank you, Ken.
How do you define social confidence, Rajiv? What does that mean?
So social confidence is an assurance that an individual or a group feels that it is safe to engage in a certain activity.
From the beginning of all of this, where we are now, one of the stages was at the beginning, just flat out shock. What stages have we gone through to this point?
But when something dramatic happens, or we hear loud thunder or noise, our tendency is to freeze and just hide under the desk. And that's what we did. And that stage is now past. The stage we are in now is what I call period of uncertainty. And in a period of uncertainty, we come out of the frozen posture, we unfreeze, and then we decide whether we want to fight or flight. Should we run away from it or should we fight? And that flight and fight depends on the social confidence. So we are in this period where some people feel like continuing to stay put or run away from it. And some people feel that they should go out and start to open businesses, get a haircut, go grocery shopping, and that's the fight mode. And during this period is when the public, the businesses, the employees who work at businesses have to decide how they will respond.
Yeah, interesting. You were saying just earlier, we've got groups that have to embrace or obtain or reach social confidence, and the general public is one of them. What has to happen for the public to feel better about that?
So the public has to find ways to gather information and form their own view that will build social confidence. It's the assurance, as I mentioned, that allows them to decide for themselves, should I go out shopping? Should I go for a haircut?
And what should they be doing or thinking about doing in order to get us to a point where we're pretty confident?
So businesses have to do two things. They have to sense and then they have to respond. They have to sense what the social confidence is among the public that they serve. And they also have to see the social confidence of the employees, which I'll talk about in a minute. And then they have to respond accordingly. The sensing part comes from various sources, some qualitative, some quantitative. So one of the most trusted source that is almost always mentioned when we talk about numbers is from Johns Hopkins University. And there is a website which anyone can go to, and it's quite interactive. It's called coronavirus.jhu.edu. So businesses can monitor that website, and it even tells you in your area how many cases are there, how many people have been tested, how many number of deaths. So that's one source. They can also monitor another objective source, which is emergency room wait time. Then there are some subjective ways that they can just look at parking lots of businesses, look at traffic on the streets. You can actually go to virginia511.org and see live traffic across the state, or they have set up cameras. And from time to time, if you see an increasing traffic at certain times of the day, that also is a sensing mechanism on the part of the business to see how the public is feeling about it. And then, of course, they can look at other businesses as well and how they are responding. That gives them the confidence. On the response of the business, there are a number of steps that they can take that can help signal to the public their confidence. So for example, they can offer curbside delivery if customers don't feel comfortable coming in. They can offer free masks as they enter the store. They can provide sanitized card. They can control how many shoppers go in. They can make sure that the shoppers go in from one gate and they come out of the other door. While they're doing that, they can also ramp up their digital options. There are a number of ways they can respond to signal to the public that we are ready.
Boy, there's a lot of inconsistencies amongst businesses and what they are doing. Some places, every employee is wearing a mask. All the carts are wiped down. Then you go to another business and it looks like everything's normal. I think it really confuses people in the public. They're not quite sure what to take from all of that when one business to the next doesn't seem to be following the same guidelines.
Yeah, so just like for people, for the public, this is the period of uncertainty for businesses too. A lot depends on the nature of the business. So businesses that are more open and more willing to work with customers are usually retail package kind of businesses. But those that are involved with individuals that are in very close proximity, such as your dentist's office or a hair salon, where they have to be very close to you, they are going to be more cautious, understandably.
Employees, what can employee, what's their role?
That is really the very critical link between the public and businesses, the employees of the business, because they are the ones who will deliver these services that we are talking about. They are the ones who interact with the public when they come in. They are the ones who actually bear the risk of a store opening or not opening. So it's very important for businesses as well as public to look after the people who are providing this service for us. For employees, it's very important to have their own social confidence. And that comes from what the business is doing to protect them. Are they providing PPEs, the personal protective equipment? Are they giving out sufficient number of masks? Are they giving them hazard pay? Are they training them how to deal with customers coming in this time of contingency? Sufficient insurance coverage. It's sort of like a three-legged stool. Unless all the three legs are in place at the same height, the stool won't work. Some large businesses are even implementing their own private testing. But I guess there is a way businesses can band together and then designate physicians across the state or across the region that any employee can go to that physician, and then physician can decide whether the employee needs a test or not. The employee is really the critical piece because that's the interface of the public with the business.
Rajiv, I'm sure there are many businesses that look at it from a financial standpoint and say, I'm not sure I can open. I'm not sure I can afford it. What should they be considering in that instance?
That's a very good question, Ken. There are a number of things that they have to consider. One of which is, are they sending a signal to the community? So if they are using the opening of the store as a signaling mechanism that we are open, then they have to be willing to incur a loss for a period of time until customers start to come back, or at least have an option to entertain customer inquiries or purchases. A business should start thinking about that if they were to open, they will probably see 30 to 40% of the revenue that they had before. That's why they should start with the assumption. And then they have to look at whether the costs that they have to incur in opening up the business will meet that 30 to 40% criteria of revenue. And again, it depends on the nature of the business. So if it's a restaurant, then you have to have a certain staff to run a restaurant, which involves a chef and somebody at the front door and somebody to serve. Whereas in retail, you can have one person at checkout and self-serve. So depending on the nature of business, they will have to make a decision whether it's even profitable or even break even for them or not.
So Rajiv, to kind of wrap it up, what can a business do to contribute to social confidence, which will get us moving in the right direction?
A business can start with small examples of opening up. So maybe curbside only at first, and then see if the customers are ready to come in. I would advise that they take advantage of this downtime if they are not open yet to train their employees, ramp up their operations, use digital means to get ready, and give another channel to those customers who may not be willing to come into the stores.
We'd like to take a moment to introduce our partners, Dell Small Business Network. We understand that as a small business, these times of crisis can be riddled with uncertainty. Dell, in association with the Hampton Roads SBDC, is offering free 10-hour counseling services to small business owners within the greater Williamsburg area to navigate your business through the pandemic. To learn more, reach out at crimdellsbn@gmail.com or follow them on Facebook.
So our discussion on social confidence doesn't stop here. Now joining us is Emmanuel Baker, owner of King Cuts in Virginia Beach.
Rajiv, we have a question from the 757recovery.com discussion board from a local business owner, Emmanuel Baker of King Cuts. Emmanuel, how are you? Thanks for joining us.
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, it's a real pleasure. Tell us about King Cuts.
King Cuts is here in Virginia Beach, the 757 area. I've been in business now for 2 years now. We service the client. Our big thing is customer service first. Really want to bring a great atmosphere for our customers. We work on like an appointment only basis. We do take walk-ins, but everything is just customer service and making the atmosphere as pleasant as possible for the client, because my ideology is you can get a great haircut everywhere, but it's hard to get good service. So we provide a great service first, and then everything else just falls in place.
Wonderful. You have a question for Professor Rajiv Kohli. Please fire away.
Yeah, I actually have several questions, Professor, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, my first question is, so the beauty industry is no stranger to surges in demand. We see a lot of these surges in demand, usually around holidays, back to school, things of that sort. But since my barbershop has opened, I've noticed a strong surge in demand that I've never seen before. And what's interesting is about 50% of that surge that I'm seeing is new customers. What do you think this conveys about my business and this industry at large?
Emmanuel, thank you for joining us, and thank you for that question. What this conveys to me is that people are waiting to get their hair done, to get their beards done, and they want to look good, they want to feel good. So this is a good sign. You will see a surge because there have been backlog of people waiting to get these services done. And the fact that you have half the people that are new customers also indicates that there is a word of mouth, there is a confidence about your business in particular and the services that you provide that these individuals want to take advantage of.
Thank you, Professor. And you kind of touched on something there that goes into my second question. The physical transformation of a good haircut is nearly impossible to emotionally duplicate. My service doesn't keep people, physically nutrition or alive, I would say, but it has a strong connection to emotional and social well-being. How do I keep advantage of this effect to boost my customers' social confidence while staying safe during this pandemic?
You're absolutely right. The services that you provide may not be life-saving, but it is important to sustain life. It's important that they feel good when they interact with others. And part of the reason why you may have seen new customers come in or some of the old customers not come in is because they are not engaging in their social environment, in their social circles as much as they were. And as soon as they start doing that, you will start to see that demand come back. To answer your question about how you can take advantage of your services and how individuals feel about it, is to provide them that social confidence. And that social confidence comes from how you convey to them the services and the safety of those services that you're providing. And that starts with your business itself, your employees, and what services, safety-related services you're providing to the customers. So when the customers walk in and they see that your employees are wearing masks, there are plexiglass between chairs when they're getting their services. The waiting room is more restricted now. If there are people waiting, that they see chairs and tables and mirrors being cleaned after every haircut or every service you provide, that starts to give them that social confidence that they need. And then, of course, your employees will exude that when they are feeling good. And then you as a business will demonstrate to your customers, your potential customers, that you're taking all the steps that you can.
You know, and we've done some things like that. With the second, I've kind of split the staff in between two locations, and to minimize the amount of people that are in one of the shops at a time, we just split the staff, and we tried to, you know, tackle that because we knew that aspect of it would come into effect. And I appreciate that, and that's something that we will try to implement going on into the future here. And Professor, my last question is, in the past, my customers normally book their appointments kind of bi-weekly. Once this influx that we've seen kind of dies down, I'm kind of predicting that the average time between customers' visits will increase to monthly. So do you think this is an accurate prediction? And if I'm right, what can I do to make my customers confident enough to visit just as often as they used to?
Good question. And I also anticipate that there will be some customers who will have found alternatives while they were waiting. So if they want a beard trim, they bought a trimmer, and they're thinking, that's good enough for me to be on a Zoom call like this one to look presentable. However, I think over time that will balance out. Now, for the small percentage of people who will find alternatives or will do it yourself kind of services, or have a family member do it for them, that I call leakage. That leakage in the business happens all the time. It happens at a slow pace, so you don't notice that. Except in this case, that leakage is now concentrated because they were not able to visit a salon for X number of weeks. However, that will balance out by all the people who've been waiting. As you said, the demand has grown 50% more than before. So you will not see that dramatically. However, having said all of this, your services that you provide are heavily dependent on other social interaction. So I anticipate that you will start to see that surge and coming back to normalcy later than other businesses. Once they start interacting, once they start meeting people, once they start socially engaging with others, is when they will feel the necessity of these services that you provide.
How is this going to change style, beards, haircuts? Have you seen a change in what men are going to look like moving forward? How they're going to groom?
So from the industry standpoint, so I work for a major company, Farouk Systems, Chi, one of the leading hair industry and products and tools in the world, and we have to stay on trend. So we were seeing a trend, which we've been seeing for a while, the trend with beards. We noticed that the beards weren't going anywhere. So guys having their beards was a thing, but now we're having to keep a mask on the whole time. Doing beards has become restricted. So there's that aspect of, like Professor Kohli mentioned earlier about the gentleman now grooming himself with a clipper or trimmer that they purchased. And us not being able to do beards kind of cancels out one part of the service. And I'm hoping that, the guys don't get too comfortable with not having a beard anymore, and they'll start growing their beards back, and that part of the service that we'll be able to do again. But it is a concern. Beards are still trending. It's still a popular thing, and we hope that it keeps trending, and we're able to continue providing that part of the grooming service. If that answered your question.
It does. Yeah. Thanks very much. Our questions came from Emmanuel Baker, the owner of King Cuts, 2 locations in Virginia Beach. Thanks very much for calling in and talking with us. We appreciate your questions.
And that concludes our discussion on social confidence with Dr. Rajiv Kohli of William & Mary and Emmanuel Baker of Virginia Beach barbershop King Cuts. Thanks to you both for joining us here today. And to our listeners, thank you for listening to the inaugural episode of the 757 Recovery Podcast. I'm today's host, Ken White. Don't forget to check out our next episode. Thanks for listening.
The 757 Recovery Podcast is brought to you by the William & Mary Raymond A. Mason School of Business and the Hampton Roads Economic Development Alliance. Executive producers include Jeffrey Rich and Jack Cornett. Associate producers include Kevin Clark, Sophie Morris, Katie Kopi, and Ishan Kanpur. Thanks for listening.